to start with, I think you want to develop a well-educated, well-rounded, resilient young man, because it's all about the person. So even if they're not going to be a footballer, they're going to be able to get on in life. They're going to be educated, and they're going to be socially aware of what's going on. And if they don't make it as a footballer, they'll be successful in life. So that's to start with. Going back into football, I think ideally the objective is to make a first-team footballer out of the player.
Yeah.
To get him to be a first-team player. If you can't do that, can you then give the boy the opportunity to go and play somewhere else and forge a career at a different football club? And possibly return, as we've seen certain players do, after having getting yourself experience and proving your worth and proving why the club first signed you as a kid. The only thing that I don't like about what happens at these Cat 1 academies is it's very pro-centric to them, because they...
How do you mean?
EPPP is the player development scheme that has been introduced in this country in the academies. Now, you've got Cat 1, which are your Manchester United, your Manchester Cities, your Chelseas and all the rest of it. Cat 2, which is slightly lesser clubs, but they still have to put a decent amount of money in to run them at the Cat 2 academies. And then Cat 3. Now, if a Cat 3 club, like a Blackpool, had a footballer and he was the next big thing, there's a compensation in place, which is a set compensation, depending on how long the player's been at the club, where any Cat 1 club can say, thank you very much, we'll cherry pick him, develop him, and all of a sudden, the big club gets all the money.
Whose fault's that? And I'll give you the answer to the question. In 2010, Brian Mulwiney introduced a solidarity payment from the Premier League. The Premier League gave it unconditional, and then they attached a hook to it once people had got used to this solidarity payment, which was a payment down to the pyramid, and said this wonderful EPPP, which is one of the biggest indignations that have been foisted on youth development outside of the Premier League, has a reduction in compensation. So you either accept the solidarity payment over here, which we've given to you over the last 4 or 5 years, you've packed it into your cash flow, and all the teams in League 1 and League 2 now need, right? Or we take it away, unless you take this mechanism in place. And it's one of the biggest outrages that were ever foisted upon youth development outside of the Premier League in this country. And the football clubs were complicit in their own downfall.
Yeah, and that's not well known, Simon, is it?
Well, I've written about it on numerous occasions and said it on numerous shows, because it's an outrage, and it's typical of the Football League pyramid, where teams at the very bottom of the pyramid have a very different agenda to teams at the top. And it's kind of Machiavellian of the Premier League to have done this in the first place.
And this is why you get your Chelseas, your Manchester Cities, your Manchester United stockpiling players, because they don't want them. They've got the net out. They're trying to get all the fish. They're trying to get all the talented players, and they don't want to miss one. So you can get them, on relatively low wages. You can develop them when they get to 19, 20. They're still on quite low wages compared to a first-team player.
Now you've got a fixed mechanism in place, which isn't market conditional, which isn't about market forces, it isn't about market pricing. It's basically a preordained formula. And I remember going absolutely apoplectic when John Bostock was taken from me through a tribunal before this even existed, when I'd been offered 1.5 million by Barcelona when he was 15, and when he was 16 years of age, a tribunal said that Spurs only had to pay 650 grand. And I went apoplectic. So Trevor's right, but going to the point of whether this is the right thing for a football club, the engine room, or part of the engine room of any decent football club, is a youth development programme. The fact that Chelsea have been sanctioned for their youth development policies in 2019 for their stockpiling of players, and sanctioned by UEFA, sanctioned and also upheld by the Court of Arbitration of Sport for the way that they breached the right policies around young players, goes to the heart of this. But when you look at it and say, if you're a young player and you're brought into an environment like Chelsea, like Tammy Abraham, and you are able to play in the best facilities from the age of 8 until 23,
with the best players,
coached in the best possible fashion, and you don't quite make it then, but you get to go out the door and earn £10 million a year playing for Roma, you've got to say that there's a mechanism in place that these boys are given an opportunity. Far more opportunities than perhaps my generation were given, because getting into a football club is far easier than it used to be, Trev, isn't it? Because people are out there looking everywhere to find talent.
So this ticks the box for you, which Chelsea are doing here.
Of course it does. It's economics. Back in the day when Man United was selling Luke Chadwick or Danny Simpson or players that come out of their academy that played one game, and of course they played for Man United, they got £3 million because it was Man United on their CV. It's part and parcel of an effectively run, well-managed, well-disciplined football club that looks at every window properly.
The flip side to this,
they get the money in already for Lukaku.
Yeah, the flip side, exactly. They've earned that. They've earned that money. And similar to Manchester City, since July 2020, Manchester City have made £115 million from sales of academy development players that have come through, not really made the grade at Manchester City, but they're still top standard. There's still a gold standard which goes
See
with
how
players.
It brings Manchester City into
But it is
quite quickly.
And that's fair enough.
Same with Chelsea.
Fair
And
play.
Eddie
But the
Newton,
consistency of it will get boring.
Eddie Newton, who was at Chelsea, he was in charge of the elite development squad. The players that weren't in the first team were pros, and he put them out on loan, and it's different strokes for different
Good
blokes.
management.
Should there be any moral outrage about this, Simon?
In what respect? It's not flesh trading.
Well, there you go.
It's
Sell
not.
the kids. They bring in 90 million,
No, it's
and
not
that
flesh.
takes care of the purchase of Lukaku.
It's not flesh trading. That you've got young players that are going into the team. You've just seen one go into the team that stayed the course, played on Saturday, scored a wonder goal, and played well in the UEFA Super Cup, played again on Saturday. You've seen Reece Williams go in there. You've seen young players that come out of Scotland, gone into Chelsea's academy at 15, and Billy Gilmore, and come through. If you're good enough, you get the opportunity, but there is only so many spaces.
Yeah.
And the fact
And to
that
actually get to that level, it's a ridiculous, especially 19, 20 years old. And some players go out on loan. So you see Phil Foden didn't go out on loan. He trained, maybe because of his physical presence. They didn't want to risk him going into a championship team because he could get bullied. But other players like Reece James, they thought, well, he's a man anyway.
Yeah.
You know, even when he was 17, 18.
So are
Send
Chelsea
him out
more
to Wigan.
sustainable than we thought they were?
well, no one's ever thought they weren't sustainable.
No, but they're maybe not the big spenders that we thought they were. Certainly they spent big on Lukaku, but this is how they've done it when they've leveraged it against this.
Hold on, they spent 250 million last year, right? They spend an average of 150 million a year over Abramovich's tenure. They're not getting 150 million pound a year out of the academy. We're micromanaging the argument to suit an argument. The fact of the matter is that this is good, effective business. Of course, it runs in the face of what they did in 2018, 2019 by breaching 150 rules.
Yeah.
Oh, there were 150 rule breaches. So they're not perfect, but no way is this flesh trading. No way is this profiteering of young players. It's producing an effective academy system which gives these boys an opportunity, and how they take it is up to them.
Yeah, the one thing that I would say which I'm against with this stockpile of players is you might get a player who's talented and hungry and he wants to make it at that football club, particular football club, whether it's Chelsea, let's just use Chelsea as an example. And then if you get into 21, 22, 23, you don't want to go out on loan because you don't want to go to the facilities. The players are not quite as technical as the players that you're training with every day. And all of a sudden you get to 23 years old, you've never played a competitive men's game in your life, and then you're released because you're not quite good enough. They can't get a bid for you to buy you because you've not proven yourself. And all of a sudden, this player's then going out into the real world and trying to earn his living. He's not going to do it.